to weigh in is constitutional lawyer Andrew Lieb. Andrew, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me once again. We've been pulling you in as much as we possibly can, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be in with us. And first and foremost, you know, folks have been probably checking in and out of these confirmation hearings. Give us a sense of your impressions of what's been going on up there on Capitol Hill as far as these hearings are so far.
I think there's a disconnect between the purpose of the committee and what people expect to happen. And I'm going to direct everyone to January6th.house.gov because they have actually the House resolution there that explains what this is all about. There's not going to be any criminal proceedings off of this specific hearing. The whole charge of the committee is to find a report to prevent future actions like this. Now, that doesn't mean DOJ won't do charges. It just means this committee's entire purview is to report.
All right, fair enough, and that's excellent information. But let me ask you this, because this is the question on everyone's mind. Will the DOJ move forward possibly with some sort of criminal action against the former president or anyone in his inner circle?
Michael, what a question. That's the million-dollar question right now. I would imagine they would definitely go against someone. Whether it rises to Trump has political implications as well, and you can have half the country lost on that. That being said, if you checked out the United States Code, inciting a riot seems to be something we're all talking about here. There's been witness tampering that we can be talking about and some other things. That said, I need to point out that a lot of people are saying, hey, we're hearing hearsay, though. We're hearing hearsay. I don't know if you remember from law school, Michael, but I remember they said it was an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted. This is a hearing. There is no court. There is no hearsay. This is just gathering information today. Let's see what DOJ does.
Absolutely. A little bit different term of due process here, so they're allowed to sort of say things like that. My question is, does this committee have any power at all, let's say, to sanction the president, saying maybe he can't run again, or any powers at all? Are they just going to make recommendations about perhaps keeping this from not happening again?
So they're enabling legislation, which is House Resolution 503, which is actually on that website I gave you on the About section, says they have no power besides to report, take evidence, and to potentially they can make a referral. But what's important here is that they're getting out a one-sided story of what happened. Now, that doesn't mean it undermines the story. It just means that what we're doing right now is having a public due diligence period. If my law firm was going to go into a litigation, we'd be doing the same thing. It's just they're doing it for the public to let everyone know what's going on, and that's going to be up to Merrick Garland and the DOJ what they do next.
And you talk about a one-sided hearing here. You know, Cassidy Hutchinson, you know, she's being hailed as the new John Dean. She sort of, folks were shocked at some of her testimony yesterday, and that's what caused a lot of this outrage, really asking if there could be some criminal charges. Do you think that's a fair comparison? Folks comparing her to John Dean, and folks remember he was involved in the Nixon administration.
I'm seeing everywhere on social media, Michael, they're calling it a Watergate moment. Right. It's definitely eye-opening. It's definitely wow. And it definitely could end up being a prosecutorial moment that changes everything. That said, one of the main issues that's coming out, I don't know if you saw the New York Times reporting, that they're not even sharing information between DOJ and this committee. So I'm interested to know what DOJ is doing behind the scenes, because I remember them always saying that the power to prosecute is the power to destroy, and that power lies in the prosecutor's discretion.
Now, ultimately, do you think these hearings are a good thing for this country? Understanding all that's been going on, all the political implications, all the division in our country, is this a good thing for our country?
100%. The more information you get out there, the better. The more factual information you get out there, the better. Whatever side we're on, everyone has this gut, I want, I believe. But getting as much data out there so people can make informed decisions is the best possible thing we can do. And the fact that we have this available on video and people can watch it and dissect it and fight about it is something that's creating a real knowledge base within our electorate, which I think is going to pave the way to stop future riots, insurrections, whatever you want to call, happen on January 6th.
There you go. Full disclosure, as much information as we can get out there cannot be a bad thing. All right, Andrew, stand by, because we have a lot more to touch on here. We want to turn our attention to the highest court now, where history was made again today. Ketanji Brown Jackson was officially sworn into the Supreme Court, and Jackson is the first black woman to join the U.S. Supreme Court. She replaces Justice Stephen Breyer, who made his retirement official today. And it is clearly a full circle moment, as the Harvard College and Harvard Law School grad once clerked for Justice Breyer. And now we're going to turn to another Supreme Court ruling from earlier this week. The Supreme Court justices have made a ruling that could possibly foreshadow more government freedom in gerrymandering political districts, perhaps making it more difficult for black and minority voters to get proper representation. Now, the ruling in Ardoin versus Robinson effectively reinstates racially gerrymandered congressional maps in the state of Louisiana. Now, the new map will allow black voters control of only one of Louisiana's 6 congressional seats, even though nearly a third of the state's population is black. Now, current law typically forbids maps that can diminish a particular racial group's voting power. But the Supreme Court voted 6-3 along party lines for Louisiana, allowing the districts to stand until they can decide exactly what the Voting Act calls for in a case to be decided in Alabama later this year. Now, court documents reveal no explanation behind the vote, but this isn't uncommon in an emergency ruling of this kind. Now, last February, the court handed down an order that reinstated maps in Alabama that 3 judges determined were illegally racially gerrymandered, and will decide in October whether to make those maps permanent. All right, still with me, constitutional lawyer Andrew Lieb, and still with me, Deputy Public Defender for Los Angeles County, Philip Dubé. Andrew, I want to go back to you first, of course, and get a sense from you as to what this means. It feels like, or it seems like, the court is sort of once again taking a look at another constitutional concept, this time being the Equal Protection Clause, and sort of weighing that against the Voting Rights Act and just how far that can go as far as race is concerned. Your thoughts on what's happening here?
It's a trend, Michael. I don't know if you saw that Justice Roberts indicated the order list at the end of today. For people that don't know, today was the end of the term and opinions. But next term, they're going to take up Moore v. Harper, which is about state legislators' power over federal elections. What we're seeing is more and more power going to these legislatures, which is becoming an issue, particularly if you loop back to our prior conversation on January 6th and whether legislators were going to certify the elections. So I'm seeing this being a battleground into the future, and I'm wondering what's going to happen. That said, I think we're going to see more power into the legislators to gerrymander into the future.
Absolutely, and here's the other trend I see. They're going through all of these rights that have been sort of created by the court over the years, and they're looking back at them and they're saying, okay, now, for instance, in this case, you know, race is something now that we've taken account of throughout the years in very sort of liberal courts. Well, we're going to look at it a little differently, and maybe race is something that is not allowed by some of these laws. Is that something you're seeing?
I think you just nailed the entire Supreme Court today. Like, couldn't have said it better myself, that they're getting rid of all of our precedent understanding of the Constitution being a living doctrine and the context of how we understood things to develop over time, and just going back to history from when it was written, what it says, and the context from the day, whether it be the 1700s, 1800s, or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. They call that, you know, looking at that strict construction. Philip Dubé, I want to get you in on this conversation because it's important for all Americans. I mean, essentially, we're seeing things like just Roe v. Wade, for instance, things that we've come to rely on in terms of interpreting this Constitution that really could be changing over the next few years with this court.
Yes, the country right now is in what I call a constitutional crisis. First and foremost, there is absolutely no predictability anymore. The court is chipping away at the doctrine of stare decisis and telling this country that we're going to set the stage for new law, for a new movement, and the best is yet to come. And it creates this quagmire, if you will, for attorneys because they don't know what law to rely on anymore in advising clients. They don't know what to do. In the gerrymandering context, I think it is really a trend to move toward a Bill of States' rights and shy away from individual rights, including the right to vote. What kind of ideological representation are you going to have in your political district when you have a high court trying to manipulate the boundary lines of where your vote matters? again, you can thank your U.S. Supreme Court for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a little scary about where this might end up. We could really end up with two separate Americas, right? Certain states, if so much power is given back to them, you know, we're really going to find states that are really different in terms of these ideological grounds that we've seen in these divides in this country. All right, Andrew Lieb, I want to thank you so much for being with me. As always, truly appreciate it. Again, taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. Philip Debay, you're going to be sticking around. Coming up next in our Talkback segment,